usually spend our time on this channel showcasing the most broken guns and items in Warzone. But what about all the things that are downright bad? Things you hate to see in your inventory. Things you forgot were even in the game in the first place. I'm Ornery, and today we're going to take a look at the most useless items in Warzone history. We're going to limit this to pretty much anything that isn't a gun, since a guns video could be its own list for the future. Go ahead and comment what you think the most useless item in Warzone of all time is. Now, believe it or not, there was actually a decent period of time where the spotter scope was arguably an off-meta option for Warzone. I bet you also forgot that it was first introduced in Warzone 1 as a tactical that you could only find through ground loot and couldn't have equipped to your loadout. It was basically just a sniper scope without the gun part, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a scope in the first place. It did let you mark players in the same fashion that you would mark someone with a recon drone, only it didn't alert them this time, so that was pretty nice, I guess. The thermal toggle in Warzone 1 was actually really good, since thermals in that game were nuts. I mean, once you had the thermal going on, you could seriously see anyone from any distance. But fast forward to Warzone 2, where thermals are trash and didn't see much viability after its nerf. I say nerf because at the launch of Warzone 2, this thing would seriously be able to mark anyone as long as they were on your screen, no matter the range or if they were through a wall or not. Since this had a prolonged ping to it, it wasn't uncommon to get an initial tag, then follow up with wall bangs to cheese a ton of free kills that you would never get otherwise. Once this got nerfed, it quickly became one of the most useless items in all of Warzone and did not carry over in Warzone 3 because it simply had no reason being in the game. For the longest time, I was under the impression that the throwing star was just a different skin for the throwing knife, similar to the flaming throwing knife in Modern Warfare 19. Turns out this thing has its own properties and values that differ from the regular throwing knife. For starters, it straight up just dealt less damage overall compared to the throwing knife, and in a game like Warzone, that's kind of a big deal since you have 300 health. Anyways, it does come with a few bonuses, like being able to throw them much faster, and not only a single one, but if you want to throw several in a row, it's also way faster than throwing a throwing knife. The trajectory, I guess you could say, is better since you didn't have to aim nearly as high and it kind of had a more horizontal approach. However, I feel like these things are super inconsistent. And what I mean by that is that the hit reg just felt completely off, and many times you throw your throwing star like right through your enemy, it felt like. No hit marker or anything. But aside from having bad damage and inconsistent hit detection, you don't even get the added effect of having a 2-hit melee like you do with a throwing knife. For me personally, that is my biggest gripe with the throwing star, because the throwing knife being able to let you panic knife in Warzone is one of the best things about it. Seriously, the amount of kills that you should never get just because you have a throwing knife equipped when you melee is unreal. Consistently being able to finish your downed enemy with a throwing knife is also really important, which I'm pretty sure the throwing star can get you a hit marker on an already downed enemy. There is just no reason to run the throwing star over the throwing knife. How many times have you seen a DDoS on the ground thinking it's a dead silence, only to be consumed by rage shortly after? The DDoS is a field upgrade that was introduced in Warzone 2 and basically is a mini EMP that covers a short distance around you. It disables claymores, proximity mines, and other explosives. Also takes up other field upgrades like the portable radar. You can even knock out vehicles, which I find to be the best thing about it. The most likely use you're going to have for it is EMPing another player. And once a player is EMP'd, their HUD gets all shaky and they also lose their red dot, but it only lasts for like 5 seconds. To me, this is very useless because a single stun or flash grenade pretty much does the exact same thing, only better, and also physically impairs them. I will say the DDoS is kind of a nice peace of mind object when you're clearing a small building, because using this when you walk in will tell you if there's any player that got affected by it, so I guess that was cool. But other than that, the DDoS sucked, and I'm pretty sure they recently removed it from Warzone 3 because I haven't seen one in ages, or I've just filtered it out in my brain entirely. One of the removed items of Warzone, the shield turret, was a kill streak that you would deploy and remain stationary, which you could then use. The whole point of it was having a shield so you would stay protected while using it. Well, that's pretty much just not true. Being completely exposed at any angle that isn't head on, and even then you're still very shootable, this thing just turned you into a sitting duck for anyone with decent aim. On top of that, the damage was decent, but definitely not good enough to outweigh the exposure. And the turning radius was so slow that some people could just outmaneuver your aim entirely. I've said it before, but I would love a rework to the shield turret to make it more viable and be able to be brought back one day possibly. We can also sprinkle in the sentry turret while we're here too, because that thing was also trash. So similarly to the spotter scope, Combat Scout was one of the best perks and without a doubt a meta contender. Once it dropped later in Warzone 1's life cycle, a lot of people were actually getting mad at how broken it was. Painting your enemy's outline for a period of time after shooting them was basically turning your bullets into snapshot grenades. I'm pretty sure this effect still carried over even when you were using a grenade or any type of explosive, so that makes every single grenade a snapshot grenade. This was honestly very annoying, and I would agree with the community that this was breaking the game. Fast forward to Warzone 2 where it got removed entirely, but then fast forward to Warzone 3 where it was brought back. And this time with a complete rework that has made it probably the worst perk to run. Now instead of painting a snapshot outline, all it does is just ping your enemy. Now obviously that's pretty bad in its own right, but it's even worse when you factor in that you can just ping an enemy manually while you're shooting them. So with that in mind, this perk is basically just pressing your ping button for you and absolutely nothing else. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that we have this version instead of the overpowered Combat Scout from Warzone 1. I think a rework is necessary for this perk to be viable at all. Here I have an entire section dedicated to just one type of attachment, and that is the underbarrel launchers. I mean literally all of them. There's a ton of different ones. You have the classic grenade launcher, the thermite, the stun, the flash, the smoke, the flamethrower, the chainsaw, the drill charge, and even the shotgun. They're all just flat out useless. We once had the infamous FAMAS underbarrel shotgun, which was one of, if not the most broken attachment that Warzone has ever seen. But after its nerf, there has seriously never been a reason to use it ever again. As far as the launchers, they're all pretty useless across the board. I'm not even talking about the given effect. I'm mainly talking about the trajectory, distance, and damage are honestly nothing like it used to be in the CODs before. I mean, these things do not even hold a candle to Modern Warfare 2 grenade launchers. You were much better off just using the respected lethal that the grenade launcher was tied to. The only one you can make a small argument for was the smoke launcher back in Warzone 1, because this let you have a total of something around like 6 or 7 smoke grenades through your underbarrel, and in a game where you couldn't stow things, this was probably one of the best utilities in the game looking back at it. Way underutilized. And then you have the limb ripper and the purifier, which really aren't that bad at all. It's more just like a fun off-meta option to use. But regardless, none of these are practical whatsoever, and they end up just wasting an entire attachment slot. Now, I'm going to come out and say that the Decoy I don't think was really designed to be the most useful item in Warzone. I see it more of a gimmicky item to kind of like just have fun with, kind of like the Limb Ripper and Purifier I was just talking about. You know how it works. You throw it down, then activate it, and a dummy soldier will pop out to trick your enemies. Well, it's not uncommon to see enemies standing still, but let me tell you why this is just flat out bad. For starters, it's the same skin every time, so it's pretty easy to tell the difference between a decoy and a player. And it also doesn't even reward you for fooling the enemy into shooting it. At least reveal the position with the ping or something. Instead, all we get is a notification saying they shot it. I will say I'm pretty sure there's been a couple of exploits using these decoys to like get inside black sites or like other glitches on the map. And if I'm being honest, that's the only thing these are good for. The camera spike was one of the coolest equipments that was first introduced into Black Ops 1. Now in Warzone, that has since evolved into the tactical camera. Working as a field upgrade, you can throw this and have it stick to any surface and give you a wireless view of whatever is inside of the camera. Now on its own, this really isn't that bad at all, since it also lets you mark enemies the same way a recon drone would, but I think that's the problem here, is that the recon drone exists. The recon drone is simply a much better version of the tactical camera, and that's for one reason alone. That's that the thing can fly. Being able to fly and mark enemies at a super long distance is just way better than a camera that just is stationary and doesn't move. In what world would you pick the tactical camera over the recon drone? Neither of them are all that rare, so you're pretty much always going to have that option between the two. But please, if anyone has one reason at all to take the camera over the drone, please let me know. People might get mad at me for this one, but I will straight up take no vest over the comms vest. For those that don't know, the comms vest pretty much turns your normal UAV into an advanced UAV all the time, which doesn't sound half bad. Well, I personally prefer a normal UAV over the advanced UAV for the sole reason of being able to see if someone is above or below you. The advanced UAV shows the direction they're facing, sure, but does not tell you if they're going to be up or down, which I will take the verticality over the direction any day. I think this is something they need to change about advanced UAVs, because since it's such a rare and also expensive item, it shouldn't be missing something that the base UAV has. Also, the fact that the only way to get rid of the comms vest once equipped is by finding another one or dying is super lame. I hate being stuck with this thing. Also, when you talk about the other vest, there's just no reason to run this vest. When I did my history of killstreaks video, I could barely find any footage of the Guardian killstreak in action, and I think that's mainly because of how useless it is. Now, it's not the worst thing ever, but I think the suppression mine is just a better Guardian for several reasons. For starters, the Guardian is marked on the map, so you'll always know when you'll encounter one. Compare that to the suppression mine, which is only seen if you have engineer equipped. Also, the suppression mine is much smaller and making it way harder to find while essentially granting you the exact same effect. Seriously, you can put these in some of the most annoying spots that people can never destroy without triggering it first. The only thing the Guardian has going for it is that it has much better range than the suppression mine, but since you're going to be knowing where it is in the first place, it's pretty easy to avoid. So does that even really matter? The Guardian's the one thing on this list that's still in the game that I think most of us would be okay if it never made a return. Alright, I know I already put a dedicated spot for underbarrel launchers on this list, but I want to dedicate another spot on this list to just all the stupid attachments that the Gunsmith has to offer. My biggest complaint with the Gunsmith is how cluttered it feels, and I think that's because there are so many attachments that you just would never ever use in your right mind when you need to just get out of the game to clean up the menu. Seriously, who is using the muzzle that increases your melee damage? Why can you put a 4x scope on a swarm? Can you even get a kill with a 15-round magazine on a Lockman sub? The Gunsmith system is actually really cool and does give you so much customization that we've never had in Call of Duty before. We need to trim the fat down significantly. It's just a personal opinion of mine that I think a lot of people would agree with. Those are the most useless items in Warzone history. Go ahead and comment what you think is the most useless item in Warzone. And if there's something I missed on this video, please comment that as well. Check out some of my other Warzone videos. Join my Discord if you're feeling crazy. And if you liked, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. And thank you so much for watching.